So, hi everyone. Thank you for attending tonight's presentation, African American Genealogy. My name is Nadia. I'm a librarian with the Woodbridge Public Library. If you have any library related questions, feel free to ask me. I'll be listed in the chat as WPL librarian. Feel free to reach out to me anytime during the chat, the presentation. So like I said, all your cameras are going to be turned off to help us focus on the presentation, and because it's being recorded, your mics are going to be muted. If you have any questions throughout the presentations or comments, feel free to drop them in the chat. We're going to be doing a brief Q&A following the presentation, and I'll be reading off your questions. So feel free to drop them in throughout the, like I said, throughout the presentation. To stay updated on our upcoming events, you can check out our Facebook, Instagram, our website, woodbridgelibrary.org. We post everything there. February was mostly virtual, but March we're going back to some in-person things. So feel free to check out our calendar. We're still going to be offering Zoom options. So if you're far away or you're just not comfortable yet, you can still have that option available to you. Now, enough from me rambling. Please join me in welcoming tonight's speakers, Gene Armstead Jr. and Doretha E. Mollett.
Good evening. I will be going first, and Doretha will be joining us, and she'll be covering DNA. I just want to make sure everybody knows how to begin their search for family. Okay, what should I just say? Click it. The definition of genealogy is a record or account of ancestry and descendants. But after you get through all that stuff, the biggest thing is making sure you know who you belong to. It's a way that people used to gain access to the throne and decide who had what property. Next slide. There are three ways that you can get your family record. One is analog. That's where you have hard sheets of paper and you end up traveling from one spot to another. You have digital, where so many things are online and you can do most of your search electronically from a distance. And then you have oral. There are some families that have a family member who can recite a good portion of their family history. But I'm not one of those. Next, please. In the hard copy, it's that you end up with a family group sheet, the pedigree sheet, the individual worksheet, and the family, step-family ancestry sheet. And I believe the next one is we go to the next slide. This is the my handwritten version of the pedigree chart. You see, I've got myself, my parents, and my grandparents. And if you look at up at the top, I'm still researching that one. But the biggest challenge here is I can't give this to many people because most people will not be able to read it. Next slide. As far as electronic versions go, you can get one of the sheets or a format to maintain the records of your family from any of these. Actually, most of them are websites. Ancestry.com, Ancestry Quest, Family Tree Book, Family Tree Maker, Gramps, Master Genealogy, FamilySearch.org. And primarily what you put into a search is genealogy software. And you'd be surprised at how much stuff you get back. Next, please. This is the electronic version. This is what comes off of my my computer layout for my family. As you can see, it's easy to read. One of the things that it does for you is if you put the person in the right spot in their family, they will show up in the right spot in the entire tree. Next. one of the key questions, what do you look for? Well, it's the 5 W's and a how. And you never know which one of those is going to be the key for you finding most of your information. Sometimes you can plug into a family member or and their records and find out everything you need to know about the family. And sometimes it's finding out why they were in a certain place, and it then provides you with enough information that you can find the family. Next, please. Who, what, when, where? My grandmother was born in Nottoway County, Virginia in 1886. My research focused there for a while. I went down to their courthouse and found some records for her and her family. If great grandma and great grandpa were married in New York City in 1898, the initial search should be targeted there. Later on, I'll tell you about those two individuals. It's a very interesting story. Well, I think it's interesting. Next. Some of the barriers for research is family lore, some of the stories that families have told, and that's both inside the family and in the community. Errors, you have people who don't know how to spell names and will not ask for them to be spelled. And then a realization that a lot of the things that we do now, they did not do back in our parents' time. For example, most of us will go into a room, close the door, and use and flush the toilet. There are a lot of places that didn't have an indoor toilet and or running water. And then you go back further than that, and it's less, can't think of the word, but it's more rustic. That's where we'll go. Next, please. Family lore. William Edwards died in 1926. The rumor was he didn't die. He left and started a new family. And that is important because William Edwards was my mother's father. And Martin V.B. Hamilton was arrested and detained when he went to meet his betrothed at Ellis Island. And I'll touch more on both of those in a minute, a very short minute. Next, please. This is the death certificate for William Edwards. The starred areas, star identifies when he passed. It was January 5th, 1926. And I had read what he died of. I've asked a couple doctors and they weren't sure what it was. But the one thing, there's a piece of information I got off this document that is essential, and that is his parents' names. And if you look at his mother's name, I am not sure what that last name is, but I have substituted every letter I can think of to make it a 4 or 5 letter word, and I still have not found her. Next, please. This is a manifest for a ship that came from Scotland to the United States. It lists all the passengers in one section. And Maggie Wood was my wife's great-grandfather's betrothed woman that he was betrothed to. And she's on line 5. She was 25 years old, a domestic. She was Scottish. They sailed out of Glasgow to New York. She had $3 in her pocket and intended to marry her husband, Martin Hamilton. She arrived on September 8th. They got married on September 13th. If you can't see it, under the arrow, and I did not realize how important that spot was, but there's an X, and that X meant that she had a challenge in the as far as their immigrating into the country is concerned. Next, please. What do you find out? And I found out through the newspaper that it wasn't Maggie that was detained, it was Martin. This is the manifest for the ship was the first thing that got me hooked. And then this got me even further hooked, because I found a 1898 paper that had a story about a biracial couple. And in here you find out that when they let her go on the 5th day, she, her husband, and a couple of the people who were there supporting him got in a carriage, went to the home of a minister who was Black and his wife was white. They got married, and that was the beginning of their relationship. I was surprised to find an article in the paper, even if it was New York. But newspapers are another source of people, information, and events. Next, please. My son and I started looking for articles, and we found 26 articles on this couple, and it was within a year. I think the last one we found was the one in Guthrie, Oklahoma. Most of them just reported the story. Guthrie decided they were going to put their 2 cents in, and they said that she should have been sent back to Scotland. But in looking at how closely articles were together in September, Maggie and Martin were kind of a couple of celebrities. May not have been able to go on the Walk of Fame, but people knew about their adventure. Next, please. I had gotten the information from the newspaper and Family Lore, and what I did was I found their marriage certificate. And the blue arrows indicate where they were born, and the red arrows identified their parents. And with that information, I have been able to go find additional information on their families. But that this was a result of pressing on and finding that article. Next, please. Some of the human errors, I'm not going to read all of them, but the basic is spelling. A lot of the people that were asked their name couldn't spell their name, but they may look and know that the first letter is an H, and the person had an H on the page, so they say that was them. Sometimes you have family lore that differs from document to document. On this one, it's a sister. Next one is cousin. Goes all over the place. Next, please. This is the 1900 census, and what it does, it identifies a family last name Howard, and it identifies the 7 members of the family. The challenge is we know this family as Howell, which is my wife's maiden name. If you go to the next one. In 1910, they were in West Virginia. We were able to identify that this was a family because of the spacing and the sequence of the children, and they're identified as Howell. And this was confirmed that this was the family. Again, sometimes you had people illiterate. One of Tony's cousins who was investigating this also said that they had a note where one of the wives wrote to another wife saying that the census taker messed everything up. This does not go over far enough, but you'll see that very few people in the household could read. Next, please. Documentation prior to 1865 for people of color often left us out. Often, if we were in it, it usually did not have any personal or identifying information. There are many families who have put up thick walls, makes it hard for family, the government, and anybody else to get to find out who their information was. And often without a verbal clue, the next step it may take you a long time because you're not sure where to look. One of the other things is you can't just make assumptions. A friend of mine's father is Fred Jackson. I was doing his genealogy, and when I put his father's name into Ancestry, we came up with 300,000. Actually, it's more than that, but hits for Fred Jackson, and they were all over the country. They were all various shades of color. And if I did not have the additional information on where he had lived and where he had gotten married, I might still be there trying to find the person. Next, please. One of the things that was said to me earlier is that there are records out there for people who were enslaved. And that's true because slave owners had to pay tax on their property, and that included their slave holdings. This is one for Caroline County, Virginia. Headlines are name of slave owner, number of slaves, description, age, sex, color. Were they a fugitive? Were or are they a fugitive from the state? How many have been manumitted? And are they disabled in any way? And the area that's bracketed there is for the brother of some people with whom my wife's great-grandparents lived. And there are 5 individuals. There's a count of 1. Then you have their age, their gender, and their color. And that's all you know about them. Now, some people look at that and say, well, you can project that one is, Joe Smith and one somebody else. You can do that. I would find it very hard to justify it. And when I told a group of white folks, white librarians, that this was a document that people were saying you could find people, and they were a little shocked. They thought that they had names and other information on them. Next, please. There are a lot of places where you can look for your documentation. Birth records, death records, information in state, town, or county archives. The cemetery records, manumission records, a good number of those are maintained by a library somewhere, and those records are usually for that area of the country. There's a thing called the Black Birth Book, where they recorded the births of Black children. Deeds and wills. If the property was being divvied up, they would have to include the slaves, and often you could get a name that way. Accounts in the newspaper, and Aunt Mary's Attic, which is that place where family members maintain their family records. And I would suggest that if you have someone who is keeping records, that the family get together and have a conversation about what happens with those documents, so you don't have a family member or somebody else just throwing them out. I've heard of that happening too many times. Next, please. This is a marriage record for Essex County. It's my in-laws. One of those numbers indicates a place. The last two digits indicate the date and the year. Next, please. This is the manumission paper for a woman who's being freed. Could you go to the next one? And this is what the verbiage is. It identifies the woman, where she was living, identifies a slave that's going to be released, gives some more information about her. And then it's for all that she's being manumitted for all services. So someone can't come in and re-enslave her. Next, please. This is a blow up of that information I just read. And if you have no idea what cursive is, you'd have a very hard time reading this document. Next, please. This is from the Black Birth book. And the one line that I have highlighted is typed out at the bottom. In addition to my Black family, there is now born by my Black white woman, Clara, who is a slave, a male Black child named Abe. And it was signed on the first day of March in 1806. But these papers and books allow you to get records. It is a case of having to work through them. Next, please. This was the will for an estate. The man died, and they had to split up his estate. And I was going through this. It was random, and I saw that there were several people listed there with a dollar value. And then when I got to that last line that says 2 infants Black considered no value. And that sort of rubbed me the wrong way, because as far as my Black kids may have a lot of value, but it is recorded someplace. Next, please. Where can you do some of your documentation search? These are sources. Most of them are online. I found out that Ellis Island is now part of Ancestry. Even though if you go into Ancestry, you have to have a Ellis Island membership to see information. But you see that you have Heritage Quest. You have to have an account. You need to spend money on ancestry.com. And also the information at Ellis Island and Fold 3, which is military records. Next, please. 2 websites I found extremely valuable. The Library of Virginia has a records broken out by county, and they're when you go on the website, they ask you which county you're looking for, and then they get to identify the options that you have and the information you have to look at it. I've been on the site by myself. I was on the site a couple times with someone helping me. There's a lot of information there. One of my challenges was remembering some of the places I needed to look. But you can get that information if you need to have a library card if you want them to send you something, and there is a fee involved, but you can look through those files forever. We had a conference in Richmond, and it was amazed how the rows and rows of microfilm they had. And there were at least 30 readers, and all of them were busy. Next, please. One of the things you do have to document your finding. You put the name of the article, what you're looking for, what you found, and primarily you want to guide the next person looking to the information you found. Next, please. Some of your online accounts, Citizens Binder, Census Binder, local church, some local churches have information on their members back from the beginning of the church. State archives, county archives have information. Also, the Church of Latter-day Saints, they have reading rooms throughout the country. And if you have an idea of what you're looking for, they may be able to help you along the way. Their reading rooms are usually open for a set period of time. It's members of the congregation that will be there helping you, but they make a lot of information available. Also, you attend presentations and workshops and genealogical events, because you never know when someone is going to say something and you realize that it's someplace you have not looked or checked. Next, please. One of the things was then and now. I've got 5 things here. I had more and I reduced it because a common event now is, well, it's not anymore, but people going to the theater and not movies. So you might see a play as opposed to seeing some folks running across the screen somewhere. How did that difference impact the community at that time? Your ride to church. It may have been a one-horse wagon that was pulling along, or a bicycle or some other vehicle, versus how people are traveling now, if they're traveling. And are there any people around that you can ask now? Unfortunately, in my case, the answer to that is no. They can't answer directly, but I am finding relatives that have access to information that they had, and it's helping out a lot. Then the question is, what are we leaving for the people who are going to come behind us, looking for our families? If we can organize our documents, have diaries and commentaries, it would allow them to go further than we did. And it could be quite rewarding for them. Next, please. Some of the things that you can do, there's different journals that you can leave for your grandchild, your children, a certain family member. If you have somebody who you can talk to, interview them and record it, either with a tape recorder or a video recorder. And by all means, label the pictures that you have, so that if someone picking up a picture may know that it's Uncle Joe, as opposed to some guy, and it ends up getting thrown out. And next, please. Leave no stone unturned. Look everywhere that you think you should look, where you might look. And if somebody else tells you to look, as long as you're not putting yourself at risk. And thank you. Doretha, you're up.
Good evening, everyone.
Everyone's muted.
Good evening.
Getting good evenings in the chat.
Okay. My name is Doretha Mollett. I'm a member of the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society of New Jersey. No, I'm not a genealogist. No, I'm not a historian. I'm just a colored girl from Ed White, West Virginia, trying to locate and identify my ancestors. Tonight, I will be presenting an introduction to DNA. DNA is a molecule that carries our genetic. Excuse me 1 minute while I make a little critique of my presentation. I need help from the librarian.
Well, if you just go up to where it says slideshow, you just want to make it bigger, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so go to where it says slideshow. Right on the top bar.
Okay.
Yep.
And I want to get the Zoom screen behind my presentation.
You might not be able to see yourself, but we see just the screen, so that's good. We see you.
No, I see.
Yeah.
No, my picture is on top of my presentation.
No, you're good though. You're good. We're good. We still see you and we see your presentation too.
Oh, okay. DNA is a, you were saying, Gene?
No, I'm good.
Okay. DNA is a molecule that carries our genetic instructions for development, functioning, growth, reproduction, and is found inside the nucleus. A special area of the cell called the nucleus. We have many DNA molecules per cell. A chromosome is a cell. Oh, I'm getting it all wrong. A chromosome is the structure which houses our DNA. The scientific name for DNA, and bear with me while I try to pronounce this word, is deoxyribonucleic acid. I think I've said it correct. And it's known as hereditary material. Different organisms have different numbers of chromosomes. Chimpanzees have 24 pair. Fruit flies have only 4. Humans have 23 pairs, 22 pairs of numbered chromosomes, and 1 pair of sex chromosomes, X and Y. The numbered chromosomes are called autosomes. Each parent contributes 1 chromosome to each pair, so that you will have in total 46 chromosomes, half from your mother and half from your father. Before DNA is passed to the child, it is reshuffled or remixed in a process called recombination. And as I stated before, only half of each parent's chromosomes is passed to the child, and half of the parents' DNA was passed to them through the same recombination. Family relationships can be predicted based on DNA. And that will be resulting when you take a DNA test and you get your match list back. There's something called, that's listed as centimorgans. And the more the centimorgans you have with a match, the more related you are. We typically share 40 to 60% of our DNA with the full sibling, between 20 to 30% with an aunt and uncle, and 5 to 17% with the first cousin. DNA found in a cell nucleus is nuclear DNA. All 23 pairs of chromosomes is called the genome. We inherit all of our nuclear DNA from our father and mother. However, we inherit mitochondrial DNA from only our mother. That's because it travels with the egg, which we know the mother has. DNA can be used to establish ethnicity, identify paternity, maternity, or other blood relatives, and in some instances, measure one's health. I know in my instance, I was tested on 23andMe, and I came back with a particular genetic mutation. And I think we're all familiar with the shows like Maury and Paternity Court, where one's DNA is tested to establish paternity. However, more recently, DNA has been used to as an investigative tool in the instance of cold criminal cases, where a portion of DNA has been preserved from that case, but it's not connected to anyone until now. And they're doing that. I think C.C. Moore is the geneticist, doing that through submitting the DNA through GEDmatch and going through family trees of people and coming up with significant matches. And quite a few cases as old as 30, 40, 50 years have been resolved in that manner. The actual DNA test involves spitting in a tube, and then you mail your test off to whatever company you're using. The results will be returned in 3 to 6 weeks. And along with a measure of ethnicity, the test results will give you some shared DNA matches. And your degree of relatedness to those matches is measured in centimorgans. So that's a terminology used, and it's the distance between chromosome positions. After DNA testing, you're provided with the shared match list, as I mentioned before. And for purposes of testing, there are 3 types of DNA: the Y DNA, the autosomal, and the my tongue gets a little tied on that word, mitochondrial DNA. Your Y chromosome comes from your father. Men have 1 X and 1 Y chromosome. The X chromosome comes from your mother. Women have 2 chromosomes. The Y DNA can be traced far into the past, testing the paternal line only. Mitochondrial DNA tests the maternal line of ancestry, since only women pass mitochondrial to their offspring. And the mitochondrial is passed by the mother to each child, whether that child is male or female. Autosomal DNA testing looks at the DNA of your autosome, which is numbered chromosomes through 22, which is in both parents. So you're able to test both lines. And this is believed to be the best testing. and will give you the best results for identifying relatives on both your maternal and paternal lines. It is important from a genealogical perspective to build a public family tree. I know many have public trees on Ancestry, and that way, when a match comes in, they can look at your family tree and establish if there are any relatives in common, or determine your most common shared ancestor. And for sure, DNA testing generates a bevy of matches. After you receive your DNA results and have had a chance to review them, it is suggested that you download that raw material and upload same to GEDmatch. And my GEDmatch number for those interested is A534284, which I'll put in the chat later. But GEDmatch, MyHeritage, Family Search are all places you can upload that raw data, and they have a bevy of tools or information that may be beneficial to you. And they also have their listing of relatives that would be generated, some of which may not be available on Ancestry, 23andMe, or whatever testing you've used. There are also sites like DNA Painter that has free tools in determining relatedness of your matches. I know I went to DNApainter.com. I had a first cousin that was unknown, and he came in at, it was an estimated first cousin. He came in at 398 centimorgans, much higher than some of my known cousins. And I put the number of centimorgans in the tool on DNA Painter, and it gave a predicted relationship, which was first cousin once removed, which turned out to be the case. There are also numerous Facebook groups that post information, have people that will help you search. They post videos. A lot of them have YouTube pages, and they're willing to help. I'll name a few of those. Genetic genealogy tips and techniques. Our Black ancestry. Lost relatives, I've traced my enslaved ancestors and their owners. Family search users groups. DNA detectives. Newbie genealogists. Family history, news, and resources. South Carolina genealogy. Ancestry helpers, Academy of Legacy Leaders, genealogy chat, genealogy just asked, Afrogenius, African America genealogy, talk genealogy and DNA, Alabama GEDmatch ancestors, 1600s to 1800s, Family Tree Academy, and Afro American Historical and Genealogical Society Incorporated, New Jersey chapter, etc. Coming up on March 3rd through 5th of the current year is Roots Text which is an online, virtual, and free family history conference. It's all virtual, and they will have sessions with guest speakers who will present various tips, strategies, ideas, everything from getting started to how to resolve your toughest brick walls. You can register at www.roottext.org. One thing for sure, and two things for certain. DNA does not lie. You will find DNA, my tongue is tied again, DNA matches who are closely related that you don't know, such as siblings, not expected parents, or grandparents. Now, some of you may know that I found out that I have a father, non-expected. The man I thought was my father turned out not to be. And I found that all out through that cousin that came in at 398 centimorgans, who through DNA Painter was my first cousin, one time removed. And since he had tested on both Ancestry and 23andMe and had a family, quite significant family tree, when 23andMe has a feature where they listed your proposed family tree. And when I went and put his family from his ancestry.com tree into his proposed tree at 23andMe, it led me exactly to the man who was my father. Now is the time more than ever when more information is available about our ancestors' records, from the state to the county to the national level. Many organizations have vast amounts of information available online. Ancestry.com, FamilySearch.org in particular. And very soon, I believe the 1st of April, the 1950 census will be available. And this will be the first time we'll be dealing with people who are still living. So that's a very exciting prospect to perhaps be able to call someone or email them and ask them questions. This page is taken from DNApainter.com. And I think it's self-explanatory. I just wanted to include it to give you an idea of what DNA Painter does and measure your relatedness to someone. It has what are the odds tools and many tools. So just click on the site and see what's available there and how it can benefit you. And the next slide is the path of the X chromosome, which we know we get our X chromosome from our mother. So it just, the arrows indicate the flow and how the DNA is passed. And remember I mentioned about how it's recombined. No two children of the two parents get the same mixture of DNA. So I may have blue eyes, you may maybe have brown, I may be tall, you may be short, and things like that. The DNA carry our genetic makeup. And the next slide is blank where you can do your family tree. Some of you may not have had a chance to do that. And gives you a point of reference, you know, to start with when you're trying to trace your family history and such. And the last page, I've listed some sites that I've mentioned: ancestry.com, 23andme.com, familysearch.org, myheritage.com. Now, a good thing about MyHeritage is this is the one you may have heard where you have to have a paid membership to do it now. It was free when it first came out, to submit your photos, and they give mobility to your photos of your ancestry. I took the family, the father I never met, and I got to see him smile and turn his head. And they have a couple like features with the photos that you can do. And jetmatch.com, our website, aahgsnj.org. And of course, YouTube. YouTube has a wealth of information about genealogy, family history, how to, anything you want. I believe you can find it on YouTube. And that completes my presentation for this evening. I thank you so much for participating.
Thank you.
And I'll turn it back over to the library.
Yes, thank you so much to both of you guys. That was a great presentation from both ends. We did have like 2 questions that came up so far. So Rochelle asks, will the PowerPoints be made available? I know this recording is going to be available. I don't know if we're sending out the slides though, but recordings are definitely going to be available to everybody. I also had a question, another question from Rochelle. We have several old camcorder discs of an interview with my mom. Unfortunately, they were not okay. Unfortunately, they were labeled with a Sharpie pen and it bled through. And the camera shop I went to said the film was destroyed. Does anyone know a source that might be able to help with this? So I guess being able to repair an old camcorder disc. I don't know if Gene, Doretha, you guys know of any locations for that?
Not right off the bat, you would have to search. I used a person in Morris Avenue in Union years ago when I had a similar problem, but I don't remember the name, or, you know, I did a search to find them. And they did a pretty good job on what they were able to restore.
Other than that, so far, no other questions, but like I said in the chat just now, if anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to drop them. Okay, so Bree says, thanks, Gene and Dorothea. Question, did your families stay in the same general locale through the years? Or did they move?
That's for Gene?
And for you, both you guys.
Okay, my family, I was raised by my grandmother and born in White, West Virginia, which is a coal camp. The camp closed in 1959 and we moved to Switzer, West Virginia, where we stayed. My grandmother stayed until she died. I stayed until I graduated high school, until 2020. I thought one man was my father. And I ran into some of my mother's friends. My mother died in 1981. I had ran into some of my mother's friends in 2012. One let the cat out the bag. She was trying to tell me that the man I thought was my father wasn't, but that my uncles and them said, no, she doesn't know what she's talking about, blah, blah, blah. So I was blindsided when I took this DNA test, and this cousin that I didn't know, not only a cousin, he's the first of a long line of he was the highest ranking, but I have about 5 or 6 others in 300s, 200s. I have about 15 closely related cousins in there. And when I did shared matches on him, they're all related to this first cousin. So, and he's from West Virginia, but he's in another generation, the younger generation. But as I said, DNA, like Medea says, Dana, don't lie. DNA don't lie. That's why I would suggest, regardless of what you know, testing your DNA, you're going to find some relatives that you didn't know about. And mostly, I was interested in who's closely related to me that I don't know, because I have 2 sons, and I definitely didn't want them to marry any close relative. Well, guess what? I got it all wrong. That's my daddy, wasn't my daddy. I have to do the scrapbooks all over. I had done the scrapbooks, the family trees, I gave them a scrapbook full of information. And I'm kind of mad, you know. I believe somebody should have and could have told the truth.
And we have another question, a question from Joan. What if you are from the Caribbean or another country? Can you find your information on these sites? So I guess the DNA sites and the different genealogy websites we posted about.
Yeah, you can find your information. I don't know to what extent. I've done some research, and it's interesting. The guy I thought was my brother, through who I thought was my father, we're very close. We're still very close.
Yeah.
You know, we say, what the heck?
There you go.
And we were tracing a relative. You know, we're still tracing them through the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
So there's records available. He's more into it than I.
And then I had a question from Dawn. What resources does Woodbridge Library have for genealogy? So if you go to our website, there's a section that lists all of our databases. As far as ones that you can search outside of the library, we have Heritage Quest online. You can log into that using your library card number. And then if you're from Woodbridge Township or you have roots in Woodbridge Township, we have a good local history collection. So, you know, you'd have to give us a couple of names or like addresses or anything that you know about, and they can kind of piece out what if you're related to somebody in Woodbridge, what's available. And then if you come to the library, we do have Ancestry, the ancestry.com available. So you can use that through the library, but you have to be in-house to use that. So that's what's available through the Woodbridge Library. And I'm going to send out a follow-up email with this recording, and I'll include what is available through the Woodbridge Library as well. That's for that.
We have a chapter, or a couple chapters that have Caribbean subcommittees. If you don't mind sending me that information, I can forward it on to them, and I expect that they will share what information they have with you.
And that's answering the question before about if you're trying to search for your family and they're in the Caribbean or another country, that would be that. And then Gene, we have another question from Bree. My grandmother's family lived in the backwoods of Alabama. Most were born at home in the 1900s through 1940s. What records would you suggest?
I would suggest that you first try the census, but even in the backwoods, there's somebody who had to keep track of them. I'm not familiar with Alabama's records, but somebody, they either had to pay tax or somebody had to pay tax on them. If you know the county that they were in, you should be able to go online and see what records they list for each county.
Got another.
Yeah. I was going to say, if that doesn't work, send me your email and I'll see what I can find.
So Dawn, another question from Dawn, where does the NJ chapter meet for the association?
We meet when we're face to face. We meet in Jersey City. Right now we're meeting by Zoom, and so everybody's home. But we meet in and now I forgot the name of the library. But we meet in one of the libraries in Jersey City on JFK Boulevard, and we meet up by the Afro American library museum that's up there. And again, send me your information. I'll make sure you get notices of the meetings.
A question from Sharon, are there resources connecting Native Americans?
There are, I have one friend who's doing it, and I can't remember what he said, but you'll have, I think the military will have more of those records, because when they were on the reservations, and like it was the military who kept track of them, a lot of their nations now have more information, but you do have to be careful, because there are some people who will be running a program for the Indians and know nothing about their ancestry, and if you could pay them some money and you will not see your money or the information.
Frank, who's also one of the participants, knows the name of the library that you guys meet at. It's called the Greenville Branch Public Library in Jersey City.
Thank you, Frank.
Yes. Yep. And let's see. Other than that, no more questions in the chat, just comments. Thanks for sending your emails. I will pass them along to Gene. We probably have to reiterate what the question was, but I will be passing them along as well. But if there's any more questions, just let us know. And if there's not any more, then I think that will be it for tonight. I know I'm walking away with a lot of information, a lot of places to get started.
All right, thank everyone for attending.
Yes, thank you so much, everybody, for coming out or staying in tonight. It's a beautiful night. I don't know if it started raining yet, so I appreciate you choosing us over the beautiful night. But I hope everyone has happy searching, looking for their family history, and I hope these resources help to get you started.
Is breathing